record. There we go. The lady said. All right, great. So yeah, so usually in our book club meetings, we have, we kind of just do an open conversation dialogue. We all just kind of go around and share like what we were interested in from the book and kind of, sometimes ponder maybe what the author intended. Now we have the author here with us, so we actually can ask, which is pretty cool. So yeah, because we're on Zoom, obviously there's a little bit with communication. So we can use a system called Stack. It's really easy. If you want to speak, you just type Stack into the chat and hit send. I'll monitor the Stack as we go. And then I'll just call on people as they are signed up in the order. And you can put yourself into Stack as many times as you want. And that way we can, actively listen to one another, not just like waiting to like jump in until it's our turn to talk or something like that. So yeah, so I will open the floor. If anybody wants to start with questions, or I'm sure I can start us off.
If anybody wants is it possible that I have everybody introduce themselves? Is that okay? Just like maybe just yeah, I just like to kind of get a feel for who's here. Yeah,
of course. I'll start since I'm unmuted. Oh, okay. Whoever said that, go ahead. Michelle, go for it.
Okay. Hi, Quan. I mean, you and I kind of already know each other, but I am the VP of Marketing for Prison Yoga Chicago. I've been with the team for a little over 3 years. And then before that, I did some work at LA County Jail and the juvenile hall over there. I'm so excited for you to be here. I'll popcorn it to Nikki.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, Quan. I'm Nikki. And this is Amelia. I'm one of the co-founders of PYC and the current sitting president. And yeah, we've been doing our work at Cook County Jail with PYC since 2016. So we're hoping to get into more facilities, and yeah, we're really, really happy that you're able to come talk to us tonight. I didn't popcorn, Kristen.
Hi, Quan. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Kristen Burns, and I'm actually new to PYC, so I'm really excited for when we get to do some more in-person work. And everyone on this screen I have only met on Zoom, so I'm excited for that too. And I'm a trauma therapist in Oak Park, which is just outside of the city, and a yoga teacher too. Yeah. Welcome.
I can pop in. I'll pop out. Hi, I'm Catherine, the current sitting VP Ops of Prison Yoga Chicago. Have been with the organization a while, maybe 3 or 4 years. Teaching in the jail though, maybe 7 or 8, a long time. And yeah, excited to be here to speak with y'all a little bit. And my former life was entrepreneurship, so I teach yoga now, as well as some other work, but I'm just incredibly compelled by your story and your mission, and I'm really appreciative that you're here. I'll also say I can't stay the entire time, so if I shut video off or kind of slide out, just want to let everybody know in advance, but I wanted to come and get as much out of this as I could. So thank you, and I will popcorn to Gina.
Hello, welcome. I'm Gina. I've been a volunteer with PYC for about 2.5 years, and I was a co-lead teacher with Sabrina of one of the classes in Cook County before things were shut down for COVID, and I'm hoping to go back to that. In addition to yoga, I am an immigration attorney, and I'm also taking a teacher training right now in Spanish, so I can start teaching in Spanish too, in addition to teaching yoga classes in English. And I've really enjoyed your book, and I'm very glad you're here tonight. Thank you. I'll pass to Julie.
Hi, I'm really excited that you're here. I could not put your book down. and I had a good part in making the book club for the detainees in Cook County using your book. I found it really interesting and insightful, so I'm so glad you're here. And I'm a teacher. I work with kids with emotional and behavioral issues. And then I also teach yoga, and I've been with PYC just for a few months now. So I'm just excited to see what other opportunities it brings. Then let me look and see who I can send it to. How about Elias? I might be saying that wrong.
Ailish.
Hi, I'm Ayla. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm in transit right now and don't want to make anyone dizzy or nauseous. So I'm just going to keep my camera off right now. I hope nobody minds. But hi, I am secretary of PYC. I've been with PYC close to 3 years now, I think. At least it's definitely over 2. And I, in my volunteer life, am a therapist at a nonprofit in Chicago, working with primarily 18 to 24-year-old youth with housing instability and experiencing mental illness or substance use concerns. So that's like what I do by day. So happy you're here. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I'm so excited to have this discussion. And then Sabrina, I think you're next. Popcorn, maybe.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Sabrina. I've been with PYC probably, I would say about 4.5-ish years. I been serving on the board in my second year of serving on the board. I'm excited that you're here too, Kwan. I think the information in your story is just powerful and important and needed for people to see that they can make it and not necessarily have to go back into the system, and they can be, successful. In my full-time work, I am in training and development in HR, and I also teach a couple yoga classes in traditional settings, and obviously teach yoga for PYC whenever the jail opens back up. That's it for me. Let's see. I will popcorn it to.
I think it's just me. Wow.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey again. Yeah, I'm Erica. I've been with Prison Yoga Chicago actively for about 1.5 years, I guess. I actually contacted PYC before I moved to Chicago, just because I started teaching yoga because I wanted to teach in jails. I was doing some outreach programs in Austin, Texas, with Texas prisoners. And when I moved to Chicago, I was like, I want to be involved in this organization. So it took a little while for me to get my security clearance because I have a criminal record. So that was like a little bit of an extra little speed bump to get over. But now I am on the board as of last September, as an executive board member. I founded the book club basically just because I went to the PYC trauma training and I was like, I've read a lot of these books and like people don't want to talk about this stuff at parties. So can we have like a group where we like talk about this stuff like intentionally? So yeah, so that's where this came out of. And I'm currently in the process of getting certified as a yoga therapist. I do small group yoga therapy and one-on-one, working with primarily people in addiction recovery, doing trauma recovery and management and that sort of thing as well. And I teach some yoga classes through the Park District and through a couple of community centers here as well. So yeah, your story was really, it was very moving. I also read it very quickly. Like I think I read it in like three days. I'm like looking, the book is down to the side that I'm like looking at it. Yeah, it was just really moving. And honestly, your story, like it reminded me, there were a lot of things that reminded me of a lot of like the guys that I grew up with. And so it hit home in a lot of places for me personally. So I'm really excited for you to be here and for us to chat with you. And yeah, the book club, we met a few weeks ago, and we came up with a whole slew of questions. So yeah, I don't know, Quan, if you want to say anything at this point, or if we want to just open up the floor, or however we want to do it.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for sharing. I just real quick. So when you meet at your book club, do you meet and then you read it and then you come back a month later, or what's the timeline on that? Or do you meet like on a regular basis for discussing the book, or like where am I in that? Is this like the very end of it or the beginning of your discussion, or?
Yeah, so for a while we were doing it where we would read the whole book and then we'd come together, and it was sort of like too long in between meetings. So now we meet, I think we've been meeting about every 3 to 4 weeks to discuss books. So yeah, I think everybody read your book. We've all read your book at this point, or most everybody I think that's here has, or is in the process of reading it. So yeah, we had all read it when we met earlier in the month.
Okay, I guess that was more for me not to spoil certain things about things that are happening. So I just wanted to be mindful of that in how I answered. Okay. I guess if there's questions or comments or whatever.
Great, thank you. All right, anybody have a question to lead us off with?
Erica, we can start with the questions in the document that we compiled. Want to do that?
Yeah, sure. I was just, those were like communally gathered. So I didn't know, I mean, some of the people who came up with those questions are here. So I didn't know if they wanted to unmute and ask the questions, but I can read them from the document. So yeah, one of the things that we discussed about was the interesting point to somebody that maybe hasn't been in prison before is the hierarchy within prison that was based on crime. So if you could speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so in California prisons, I'm not sure how it is in other states. The hierarchy is usually the more, I guess, violent the crime, or the more macho, like if it's a gang crime, if it's a robbery, or if you're involved with the gang and then doing robberies, then they're usually looked up as, okay, these are the real thugs or the criminals. And then at the bottom of it is always people that were child molesters or rapists, or people that had sex crimes, or people that were that had snitched on other people. So it was, and in between, anywhere in between, somebody could fall in for, it's always when guys ask, okay, what are you in for? How much time are you facing? The more time you're facing, usually the more street cred it would, I guess, kind of give you in prison, unless if it was for a sex offense.
Interesting, thank you. So yeah, so if you were facing, so actually coming off of that, so like if you were facing a lot of time, but you're like earlier on in your sentence, and then you like are talking to somebody who maybe isn't facing as much time, but is further along in their sentence, does that factor in also? Like,
well,
they've been in longer,
so, when someone's first arrested, they're put in a jail. So everybody at the county jail is already facing the time. So that's a different dynamic than once they're already sentenced and they're sent up to prison. So inside the jails, that's how that kind of the hierarchy already kind of sits. And then once you get into prison, it becomes more, let's say if you have a life sentence, or 90 years to life, 150 years life without possibility of parole, those are all lumped together. You have a life. And there's people that have determinate sentence, 20 years, 50 years, then that falls below it. And then there are people that are 6 months to the house, or only there for a couple years. So those are looked as, okay, these are just short timers. But then, so the crime is the first part. And then let's say it's also what you do during your prison sentence. So if you're going on missions, if you're acting violent, if you are involved with the drug trade, tobacco trades, or things that are part of the black market, if you have your hands mixed up in it, then suddenly it also brings more respectability. It gives you recognition on the yards, or people hear about a person. So for example, when I got to a new prison yard, and then people, oh, you're Quan from this prison. Oh yeah, we heard about you here. And it's just, so it just kind of, it's weird because that culture inside prison, people want to live up by their image. They're chasing that status. I guess not too different from how people can act out here in the real world, although they're not chasing status through violence, but it's still, there's a status, there's a a sense of identity wrapped up in what you do or what you've accomplished.
That makes sense. Thank you. Okay, well, so I'll ask a question that I personally am wondering about. With your re-entry process, there wasn't a lot of talk about it in the book. You talked about the whole thing at the airport, which was pretty amazing. But when you were going through your re-entry, can you share a little bit about that as far as like where you felt supported, where you didn't feel supported, what maybe if people want to help people through reentry, where is like something that we can like plug into, or or like what is something that we can do to help with supporting that? Yeah, sort of your personal experience, and then like if you have advice around it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest I would say challenges that I did not see coming was conflict with family members, especially family members that I hadn't seen in a couple decades or 16 odd years. And then they saw me as one person going in, and I think they still had that image of me. And then for me to come home, and now I've learned how to communicate, I would say, more effectively. I can draw my boundaries. I'm not as wrapped up even in simple things as far as, the dynamic with me and my mom and wanting to have to please her, and being able to draw those boundaries and seeing my brother and sister still in some ways falling in those same patterns sometimes. Or some family members just thought, okay, well, he just went to prison. He didn't really learn anything those years, or he doesn't know anything about how to live a real life out here. So there's that. There's always, I think, that. I would have to say also the sense of missing the men. Like I used to go, I remember I used to go to our lifers meetings, and I kind of reference it in the book, is the guys would get up and just talk about like, oh, they had a bad day, this, I had a bad day, that, but then they always dismiss everything that about their bad day or their bad week or their month, and say, but I have to remind myself that my worst day out here is better than my best day in there. And I never totally believed in that. I go, wait, we're dismissing our whole prison experience. Like there's some valuable stuff I took with me from in there. So why are we in essence dismissing everything that we learned about ourselves in there and along our journey, just because we have to conform with what society thinks? Oh, you were in prison, that means you don't bring no value, or there must not be any value in your experience, or why are you complaining, you're home from prison now? And I think they buy into it from. So maybe if you're talking about how to best support people coming home from prison, maybe just instead of prescribing to them how they should feel, or telling them, oh, you shouldn't do that, you should just do this. I mean, just listen to what do they want to do and support them in that way. Just, acknowledge and honor what they want to do. Because I think, I work in reentry, so I see a lot of the men and women that come home, and I see the struggles they have, and it's usually, personally, it's always family or relationships, and then there's also this other component that you may totally overlook, like when we say technology. Oh yeah, you just learn it, but then there's some people have been gone 20, 25 years, 30 years. Don't know how to send a text message, let alone answer an email or add an attachment. And now they have to find a job. They have to feel like they're far behind. They have to catch up. And I think in it, they feel stupid because they are not part of society in a sense, because they can't communicate with people. So those are, I would say, very real challenges with people coming home from prison. But I think if you understand from that context, that's a very I would say tangible way to support them, is to acknowledge, okay, this is a learning curve for you. So yes, like let's say if they say, oh, I can't send this text. And it's not only the text, I think it's just everything else. And they just feel like, I can't do this. This is overwhelming. And then I think it's just being able to acknowledge like, yeah, this is overwhelming. This is like learning a new language, because that's basically you've been away and you have to learn a completely new language out here with computers and technology. And then on top of that, trying to find a job, and then learning how to answer the question of where have you been all these years? I mean, even when I first came home, I felt a little bit, you know, I was part of a yoga program in prison. So my brother and sister-in-law took me to their yoga studio the very next day. And I remember when we walked in, like, I can't remember who, one of them said, oh, you shouldn't talk about where you've been. People won't understand. So I think in a way, I was like, oh crap, I shouldn't talk about it. And I felt ashamed, like, but then yet I felt I was betraying the men that I left behind, because we talk about it openly and like, hey, I'm not that same person. But yeah, so I think just little things like that people would feel like out here, oh, that's I didn't really say anything, or it's insignificant. But I think for someone coming home from prison, I think it just adds up layers upon layers of possibly, especially if someone didn't have to go to the parole board, so they didn't have to do a lot of inner work on themselves, or there hasn't been any development of of a personal self-worth or identity, then I would say even those challenges might even be more pronounced for somebody coming home.
Thank you. Yeah, so with that, I have like 4 different questions that like branched at various parts while you were talking. So with that, you said you work with people on reentry. So is that part of what you do through Defy Ventures, is like help people with like I wouldn't say basic, but like with skills like understanding technology and like that sort of thing, and like helping them with job interview type things? I mean, I looked at Defy Ventures website, but if you could share a little bit about what you're doing there, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. And I guess for those of you on the call, so Defy Ventures is a nonprofit that helps men and women with criminal histories to transform their lives through the journey of entrepreneurship. Excuse me. And of course, entrepreneurship is the carrot that we dangle to get people through the doors. But there's a very large component of character and personal development in it. Once they come home, they become part of our post-release services, where we help them with very practical workshops on rebuilding credit after reentry, technology basics, networking, time management. We have community workshops where they just come together with volunteers and other formerly incarcerated folks, and they just come together and they just share space and they talk about challenges that they may have. Then we also have employment partnerships. We have referrals for other service providers, whether that's helping them find housing, helping them find job opportunities. We have business coaching nights and career reentry nights where they can get set up with resume coaching from volunteers. We have quite a bit of volunteers from the business sector, a lot of people in tech and venture capitalists. So they come to our post-release events. They've also come with us into prison. So there's that whole component of people just coming home from prison. We also believe that, even if the vast majority of our graduates do not go on to create a business, we're absolutely fine with that. We just believe that the lens of entrepreneurship, grit, resiliency, pivoting, all of these are so essential in their reentry process. So it's for them to look, okay, like there's this thing we talk about in part of our program inside is, okay, you have to do 10 asks a day, 50 asks a week. And an ask is to go to one job interview or to send your resume. So they get this mindset of it's not one interview, it is going on, sending my resume out to 50 different employers a week, going on, this interview counts as one of them. And so it's like, it's a numbers game. And I think that's where they get this mindset of, yeah, I'm supported and this failure does not define me. These are just little stumbling blocks that I'm gonna face along the way.
That's awesome. And is the program, so is Defy Ventures, is it like a set length of time, like this is a 3-week program, or not 3 weeks, 3-month program, or a 6-month program, or a
It's
year-long
a
program, or they sort
it's a
of tell
it's
themselves?
a program inside. It's a 7-month program inside. But once
Okay.
they graduate, they are part of our alumni for life. I mean, they're considered. We call them entrepreneurs in training, so EITs for short, as part of our humanizing language, and I guess also empowering language. Like, yeah, you are now entrepreneurs, and this is what it means. So that's what we do at DeFi.
It's really cool. And I think that there's a branch of DeFi in Illinois, correct? I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but yeah.
Yeah, we have an amazing executive director out there named Melissa. So, yeah, if you'd like to be connected with her, we can definitely do that after the call.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
I have a question just on the DeFi Ventures platform here, Quan. Just kind of wondering what has been something you've learned that's been just really helpful in the work that you do since you've ventured off into offering this important.
Learn that's helpful in what context?
In meeting people, meeting participants where in a way that's helpful, or
I mean, remember how the TSA agent told me welcome home? I mean, that's the very first thing I get to do when they come home, is the very first phone call. I mean, our program just split. It used to be just called post release, but now it's split into 2 paths called career and reentry and entrepreneurship. I've been moved over to entrepreneurship, but when I was doing the post release before, it was called career and reentry. I think those conversations were probably the best part of my job, is being able to welcome somebody home and to tell them welcome home, let them know, hey, there's a couple things you will have to do. You're gonna have to electronically sign this. You have to reclaim your DeFi account, and it's a bunch of technology. And I let them know right away. I acknowledge them. This is gonna feel very overwhelming, but I'm here to hold you along every step of the way. And this is what the organization is going to do. This is your community now. So that's, I think, just give them some type of soft landing and kind of lay out, like, these are challenges that you're going to face, but this is how we're going to help support you in this learning process.
Thanks.
Nikki.
My internet was a little weird. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. So I was wondering, I'm sort of switching topics slightly, but it's still with, yeah, anyway, knowing what we do with PYC, that we teach trauma-informed yoga. You know, currently we are in Cook County Jail as our only location. We were about to start at Indiana State Prison, like right when the pandemic hit, but just knowing what we do you have any advice or tips for us as volunteers who are going into these facilities? Anything, I mean, any advice you can think of for us, whether it's like things to make sure we do, things to avoid doing, or yeah, just anything from a volunteer perspective?
Let me see. Maybe something to avoid is making a promise that you may not be able to keep. Maybe your intention is good, but you may not be able to keep it a year from now, 5 years, or 10 years from now, whenever they come home. Like, because I think because if we're talking about they've had enough experiences of letdowns in the past, and it may feel good in the moment, and your intentions may be good, but let's just say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, let's say you say, oh yeah, if you come home, I'll definitely hire you, or I would definitely help you find a job, and then they would hold on to it, and then suddenly you're no longer with the organization, or you've moved on, or other things. So because then that could be a letdown. If you're going in, I think just and I'm sure I'm saying something that you probably already don't or already know, is that you make a big difference in their lives with your presence. So I've seen volunteers who don't think they do, but I remember every single volunteer that used to come in when I was incarcerated, and it was like Like I expect, okay, you say, you know how you're in hot yoga and you're tired and it's very stuffy and hot, and then they open those doors and then just that fresh air comes through. That's how it was when volunteers would come through for us. That's just how it felt. That's the best way I could describe it. It's just a breath of fresh air. There's color, there's hope, there's love, there's joy, and there's like, I can't wait for them to come back. People do care about me. So if I was to say something, like, I would say what you do matters. Yeah, your work helps.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear, just since we don't, I mean, not that we need to hear that, but we don't have contact with, you know, our students when they leave us. Like, we actually don't usually know even what happens to them. We usually hear through the grapevine from other students, like, oh, they were sentenced, or oh, they got out, or and that's something that we're working on, of how we can have presence in like the community, so that maybe people can find us, our students can find us after the fact, like when they get out. So that is really helpful to hear, and to just keep us going, if for lack of a better phrase.
And I think maybe, I'm, you know, I'm assuming that you already are doing this in part of the practice, but maybe like giving them very practical ways to continue their practice, like with challenges that they're going to inevitably face during their next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of their life, or maybe the rest of their life. But yeah, just get them to realize these are just daily habits that can continue to help bring them peace.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Julie's up next.
So with all of the people you get to work with and meet, I was wondering, what kinds of things do you notice that people can get involved in or do for themselves to avoid getting caught up in maybe like previous illegal activities, or even just unhelpful addictions that they may have had, you know, prior to being incarcerated? What kinds of things do they, you know, have in their lives or put into their lives that help them kind of avoid getting stuck?
Oh, I mean, I think it would be, it wouldn't be just, okay, here's the magic pill and then you're gonna be fine with it. I would have to say it's a whole combination of books or some type of hobbies, like exercise, a community, like just everything, and then a lot of I like, what helped me is coming to a place of personal responsibility in my life, like realizing like every single choice I'm making can help me either become better or worse, and then acting on that. Like, that's just how I approached it. So I would say for them, you know, I think each person has their own journey, but I think the ones that I saw that were most, I would have to say that made the most impact on the yards that we were at, especially when that became almost like a small movement amongst us, were the ones that came to a place of self-understanding and self-acceptance and self-forgiveness, I would have to say. So these all tie in, and then once they learn to heal and forgive themselves, then they can make use of further learning and you know, because somebody could say, okay, that was a crime, I won't ever do anything else again, and just get lost in college and books and things like that. But if they never address that, what got me here, and they might not ask that questions, then that's somebody that could easily revert back to, oh man, the world is just screwing me over. When the next time they get caught on, was come up with a dirty drug test, or get bad news and revert back to substance abuse, or decide to just act violently on the yard. So I think it takes, I guess, a whole approach. There's not just one little thing that we could just prescribe.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Thank you.
Michelle.
And hi, Christina. I saw Christina pop on, so I just wanted to say
Hey,
hi.
Christina.
Hi.
All right, Kwan, I was wondering, like, while you were going through your parole hearings, what was going through your mind at that time, and how did you find like the motivation to keep like persevering, especially when you were being written off as inauthentic?
Are you talking about the first one or the second one?
All of them, both of them.
Okay. I remember, so, the first hearing was my first time going into an actual hearing, but I would have to say I pictured a million times in my head by that time with all the transcripts I studied and everything. And when I saw like that commissioner, at the time she was only, I forgot what the term is. I think it's called, she was a deputy commissioner. There's a presiding commissioner and a deputy commissioner. So at the time she was only a deputy commissioner, and she was being very harsh and sarcastic to me. And it's funny because when I was writing my book, what was it like? That hearing was 2013. I was writing my book around 2018. So this is 5 years after I've been home from prison, right? Even in rereading my transcripts to that part, her words still bothered and hurt me. Like that's how it just took me right back. And so, yeah, I remember I just had to continue with my breathing, anchoring myself, and it still wasn't working. And realizing like everything I had practiced, with communicating effectively and nonviolent communication, she was not embodying any of it. And every I statement I was giving her was not landing. And I was just like, okay, she's going to deny me. So then when I went to the second hearing, and now she's back and she's the presiding commissioner now. So she took it upon herself to, I think, even go even more over the top. And it was really, I thought for sure, okay, this is a multiple year denial. So now I just have to put something on the record that I don't screw myself for future years, future board hearings. And that was just being very mindful. Then yet she's asking questions and I'm just trying to explain myself. So I don't know. I remember when, and as you read in the book, like my attorney who kept on calling the bathroom breaks with her strategy, when we went out into that hallway, and she's like, this is not fair. This is what we're gonna do. And I feel sick. I feel sick to my stomach, so I don't feel like going back in there. And that's how she justified it. But to me, by that time, I had been reading my inner jewel to myself like every day, every morning for myself as my North Star for years already. So when she gave that strategy out, I go, okay, this will work. I knew it would work. Like, yeah, I'll get what's a fair hearing in 6 or 9 months. But the other part of me felt I was going to betray myself and everything that I had laid out for myself. This goes against everything I wanted to do. So I said no. And I know she looked at me like I was crazy, but I said, let's just go back in there. Like, we're here to hold ourselves accountable, not to be found suitable. Let's go back in. And, so when they read into the record, like they read a whole long thing. And then suddenly they said, we find the prisoner is not dangerous or currently something. I can't remember. I looked at her, I was like, what did they say? She had this big smile. And that's when I know, like, I'm not hearing this wrong. Like, oh my God, they're letting me go home. So yeah, it's just a miracle. And I don't know. So I just felt like, yeah, this is, I guess when people talk about, okay, if you're talking about you're leading a path of spirituality and going with what you believe in, then this is what the your higher power is capable of doing, and just leaning into it.
That's amazing. And I also loved reading your inner jewel. Do you still kind of say that to yourself?
I have it posted on my computer. I have it. It's there to remind me. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually, Michelle, good. Yeah, I was going to ask you. So definitely while you were in prison, you developed, it seems, you developed a spiritual practice, and you have your like daily routines of, I mean, obviously there's like a daily routine of being in prison, but your own like spiritual practice, your own checking in with yourself practice, your own, inner work. As you have been, since you've been out of prison, do you still have that each day? I mean, you just said you have the inner jewel on your computer. Do you still, like, what does your practice look like now? How has it changed and how is it the same? And Just curious.
No, I would say I think I was at the height of my spiritual practice inside prison, and like I could easily say, oh, it's because everything's pulled me a million different ways, but it's not. It's because I've allowed other distractions to come into my life where early in the morning I wake up and I go, oh, okay, I got to go to the gym. I have to do this. And then as I'm driving, then I can remember on some good days to slow down my breathing as I'm driving, say a couple of the lines from it, or do my prayer of St. Augustine. I still attended mass up until they shut things down, but then I've been away for so long, and I keep telling myself, okay, like last Sunday, okay, I'm gonna go to mass, and I woke up and I made some plans with one of my friends. We went mountain biking, and I totally forgot. And oh man, I've gotten away from some of these things that really helped keep me grounded back then. Yeah, but there are still some things that's when it comes down to like certain things when in my daily life where I feel conflict coming up or like frustration, then that's when it's a good reminder. Okay, where are my thoughts going with this? And then finally having to slow down and just go back to how things I laid out for myself to basically bring peace and just bring a little bit of clarity to my world. But it's nowhere near how clear I saw the world when I was in there, unfortunately.
Thank you. Nikki.
Kind of going off that, you had, I forget his name now, but when you kind of start off telling your journey of the guy that you were like kind of paired with who started asking you those questions.
Donnie?
What was his name?
Was it Donnie? You're talking about Donnie?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, sometimes I'm bad with names and books and stuff, but and you started that process, and at first, you were really taken aback by the questions he was asking you, and that really started your journey and everything. And then you started giving back within the prison and trying to help other guys through that process. And you said tonight even that it's you have to want to like help yourself kind of thing. Like it has to come from within first. And obviously like there's people and tools that can help people, help you through that process. But like in a perfect world, like what do you, like, I'm just thinking like how amazing it was that you were paired with that guy to start you on that journey. Like, I'm sure you've thought like, what would have happened if, or like, what would that have looked like for you if you hadn't met him? And I'm sure, I'm guessing you have wanted to give back the tools that you learned. So like in a perfect world, like what would prisons be? I don't even know how to ask this question. Like what tools would be available to people at the ready so that it's not like how could the hierarchy change like in a perfect world? Like I'm just thinking with that hierarchy, it seems like it would be so difficult to do that inner work because part of that hierarchy is survival, like I don't know if my questions are making sense at all, but I'm just trying to think like how can more people who are incarcerated have access to the tools to help them through that transformational process?
Well, when I look back now, like, yes, Donnie came at the most perfect pivotal moment in my life. But then if I'm looking back over the course of my life, how many other people had come into my life, but that I had dismissed or that I did not recognize, or I was not ready yet at the time. So there may have been other messengers from God that had popped up in my life, but I just didn't see them all the time. And it's just, so I think like with Donnie, and even after that, for me, it was cultivating a mindset of who is going to cross my path today that can help me along on this journey. Whether they're going to challenge me about something that I want to do, or get me to practice a way that I want to speak to people. I'm not sure, if we're talking about the prison hierarchy, yeah, I wish I could wave a magic wand and say, okay, this is all done and away with. It's, I remember even for myself, like recognizing that hierarchy and how my own sense of identity was wrapped up into it. And, like this, I can only describe it as like different threads of my identity wrapped around all these things that I felt was important, and coming to the conclusion, like, all this is fake. Like, I am fake. How did I chase all this my whole life? And how do I rebuild myself? It's just basically having to go back to that scared little boy when my father first was diagnosed with leukemia, just around that time, and rebuilding myself from there. And then realizing, okay, like there has to be some sense of purpose in my life of where I'm headed with this. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question in any way with the hierarchy, but I just know from my own personal self, that's the only way I could describe how I began to come to some sense of awakening for myself.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was really beautiful, the point you made of like, there's different messengers, throughout our lives. And sometimes we don't know who, if we're not ready, we're not going to see, we might skip over some of them until we are ready. So
yeah,
I guess just, providing as many opportunities for people to receive those messages, and people who are there to support and help as much as possible. So
yeah, because I think for when the light came on for me and I began to create a few groups, get involved with a few groups, and just facilitate a lot of them, it was more, I'm here to just lay out these seeds, and it's going to be up to them to nurture and cultivate and to grow it. But tomorrow I'm going to be speaking to some kids at the Orange County Juvenile Hall. This is the same juvenile hall that I was first incarcerated at, like close to 30 years ago. And so I was thinking, like, a couple of my friends, oh, what are you going to say? I go, I don't know what I'm going to say. Like, I don't think it's on me to say anything. Maybe it's just to get to know them and ask them and just see what they want to know. I mean, and it's also because of, and Christine's on the call. It's because of our fundraiser. Like, there was those books that were given to the your PYC participants. The same fundraiser helped fund these books going into the juvenile hall. So these kids, I guess when the books came in, they read it, and then they requested that staff, they reached back out to me. They asked if I would personally show up instead of a Zoom call. They said these kids have asked for you, and usually they've never done this. So yeah, I would love to go back in, but I'm not sure, even if I said the most beautiful, eloquent things, would this land or would this help them? I highly doubt it. I think it's going to be up to them to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with this seed that's been planted in my garden? How do I cultivate this?
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. I love that analogy with the seeds. Michelle, I think you're after me.
Yeah, Kwan, I know that you built a ton of friendships while you're in, since your release, have you been able to help some of the guys you were locked up with? Have you been able to see any of them, talk to them?
Yeah, well, I think first is like one of the first things I did for my cell phone is get, I forgot what that company is called, but I opened an account so they could collect calls. Then I could start sending packages to them. When I created my first company 6 months after I came home. So then when a couple of my own friends that were going up for the parole board, I wrote employment support letters for them to say, hey, I'm offering a job. This is what I will pay. I would openly hire this person coming home. I know this person's character. So to be able to see that I can help make an impact still and reach back into them, it's been really gratifying for me. Getting, I'm not sure if but part of also this fundraiser helped me to get my book approved for distribution through every prison law library in the state of California. That's 125 prison law libraries. So I got to say that my book is in basically now touched every single prison in California. So that's one state down and 49 more to go. And I get letters from them coming home. I mean, I think those, remember how I say the best part of my job before is to say welcome home. I think some of the best part of my days is when I get a letter from somebody inside and they tell me how much my book helped them or what it's going to do for them in some way. So I could reread it. I go, oh, this made it all worth it. Because when I was writing the book, there were some days when it felt overwhelming. Like, I'm telling myself, every part of my being wanted out of prison. Why am I placing myself back in there? Like smelling it again and tasting the food and like just everything, the ugliness and especially in my younger years. Why would I put myself back in there? But then I had to remind myself, this is a small sacrifice to pay to help them. Like every time I go back into prison and someone finds out I had a life sentence and they ask me all these questions, and like within 5 minutes, I go, man, I could help this person. I don't have the time. I'm not on this yard, but if I was on this yard, I could help them. I could help them find their way out. So that's what always continued to give me encouragement. Like, okay, I have to dig deeper. So, in writing the book, like when I was doing my facilitating work inside, I saw facilitators that were up there that would say, you need to do this, this, and this, and like very prescriptive. But I noticed that I was most effective and I felt that I was most impactful when I shared of my own story and I shared of my own vulnerabilities. Like, this is where I failed. This is what I used to think, but this is what I believe now. And that's kind of the way I approached writing the book. It wasn't like, and you've read it, it wasn't like to tell them what to do. It's more, hey, this is where I failed along the way, but this is how I kind of began to find my way out. And I just used that the same way of connecting that I did in there with the men. And I was hoping that's a way that could help them while they're reading this. And I think from quite a bit of the feedback, it's helping them. So that's I guess that's a small little impact that I continue to get to make for each of their lives.
Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty big impact. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything small about that, especially, lots of those adds up to something really big. So yeah, on that note, yeah, I know originally we had said that we would like to have some of the forms back from the people that are doing the book club in CCJ. Unfortunately, because of, the bureaucratic red tape that is like the jail system, they are going to be starting the book at the beginning of June. So we also, because of legal reasons, couldn't apparently ask them if we could share things with you. But what we did do is put your contact information on as part of like the, what they're going to fill out with encouragement. So, to please reach out to you just, for personal, to just, check in with you and talk about how, their thoughts on the book. And then also if they have like, they want to give testimony or anything like that for you to be able to have.
Oh, how exciting. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be excited too, it's letters in jail. It's always appreciated. I wanted to ask a question when you were talking, and I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry, that's like the active listening part, right? Is sometimes I'm like, wait, what was that? Oh, right. So yeah, you mentioned, because you were like, oh, if I was on this yard, I could help this guy, but like, I'm not here right now, I don't have this time. Do you do any sort of like mentorship programming, like within the jail or within the prisons, to like train, to help people to like be like trained up to like help other people with this sort of thing? Or
when I was on the yard at Solano, that's the guys, like the small crew that I started working and coaching. Like, we didn't know it was coaching at the time, we just called it board prep. But I remember when most of the men sat down with me, like I knew their goal was to go home. Like they want to, and I think they thought like I had some magical combination of words. But my motive in sitting with each of them is like, I have already found like this amazing freedom inside myself, and I just want to get them there. But I knew for myself it wasn't easy, but I had been there and I had done that. So I usually kind of try to get them there, by trying to mirror things back, by trying to point out flaws in the narratives they were trying to tell me, and begin to get them to come to a place of, self responsibility and personal responsibility. And the ones that grasped it were also became their own messengers in a way. So I saw the ripple effect of what we were able to do. There's no way to do it in these prisons because I'm only there for a Defy event. We go and we do our own event, and then I just talk to a few guys here and there, and they usually want to come up and talk to me because they know that I'm a former life term prisoner. And they just say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to the board in 6 months," or "This I was denied at the board 7 years, and this is what they told me." But usually, when I hear them talk, I'm like, "Okay, I may not be able to help this person specifically, but and that ties right into when I was first approached to write the book. I was approached by I'm not sure if you may know him, Tucker Max. He wrote the Frat Tire series. He was like like known as the womanizer. Well, I guess he changed a bunch of his focus, and now he built his company to help make an impact on getting people to write their stories. So I remember he first approached me and said, because I did a talk in Colorado, and he said, "Do you see how you affected every single person in this place?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What if I told you I could help you scale that out 10,000 times, 100,000 times?" He's like, "Would you want to do that? Do you want to make an impact like that?" I was like, "Sure. Like how? What do you want?" He's like, "What if I told you I want you to come to our publishing company, and we'll get a book out of you?" And that's where it began. So I think that's the other thing where I was very clear on this is who the book is for, and like very clear on the reason why I'm writing it, and realizing this is how I can share the little nuggets of wisdom that I learned along the way. So hopefully they can see, okay, here's a couple more seeds that I can pull from Kwan's story, and hopefully this can help me in some way, and hopefully in them helping themselves, and they begin to help others, like how I used to see it. That's my hope. The other thing that's been really cool is the feedback that I've been getting from people out here that when I first had my beta readers, and they already started telling me, "Hey, this story is much more than for people in prison. Like I continue to get so much out of it." And at first I just missed a lot of it because like some of them were close friends or volunteers that had known me through Defy. But then as more and more people started giving me feedback, and then even random strangers or that have read it and just reached out, then I go, okay, I guess, yeah, we all live in prisons of some sort or another. People have been getting quite a bit out of it. So that's been pretty cool.
Two things from that. One, what would you say are like your 3 top life-changing books that really helped you get through everything and that you still pick up to this day and look at?
Let me see. 3 top. Wow, that's so hard to choose. Well, one book that I brought with me everywhere, like every morning, like or every few days, I flip through a chapter, is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I just love the way he wrote. I love that book. I love The Alchemist. I just loved how that story was written. Let me see. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. I love how he framed choices in it for me. I even carried this quote by him from that book, talking about how your choices can transform you, either into a hellish creature or into a heavenly creature. Well, that's 3, but I could go on. Yeah, there's so many books. Yeah.
I love it. And Kwan, just to let you know, like I was telling some of my coworkers in my day job about your book, and I think about 5 of them bought your book and have read it and love it. They're not on here today, but just wanted to give you that feedback.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it definitely, I think that your story, although it's, you know, it's unique to you, it's your story and it has your unique circumstances. I think ultimately it's a story about personal transformation and growth. And I think that that's something that is a pretty universally connectable, you know, theme. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely not just for people that are incarcerated. So yeah, so that's cool. So about the mentorship thing. So that's, do you know, are there still guys that like you were in prison with that are still like helping others in the way that you were, like, you know, like that like ripple effect still going on? Like, are you still in contact with people, or do you know people who are, or?
Yeah, I know some of them have actually come home, which is great, and then some that are still inside. So and the ones that because I've gone back into Solano a couple times, the prison that I paroled from. So there were people that would come up to me that I did not remember their names or faces sometimes because of the groups I used to run. And some of them were like, hey, when we were in group, you used to teach us this, and I get it now. That's what I'm doing here in the yard. So those were really cool conversations to have with people that remembered me. Some of my friends that we were in the same facilitating together were, you know, were at the time, one of them, he had a life without possibility of parole. So I remember going back in and seeing him, and we were just in the group together. Like I'm on the outside, he's on the inside, but it just felt like, damn, we're hanging out again, we're together. But it broke my heart because this guy was so much more deserving of coming home than me. That's how I felt. I felt like this sucks. Like, how did I get to go home? And this man has been written off by, you know, society, that they look at him as irredeemable, but yet he's doing so much more amazing work than I ever could have in my life. And then so those were heartbreaking times when I used to go back into.
We have a few minutes left. Oh, actually, I did have a question we came up with that we kind of, all of us kind of collectively were wondering. So as the book, so the book just released this year, correct? I think it's 2020 last year, right?
September last year, yeah.
Okay, so it's relatively new, but curious if there are people that have sort of like come out of the woodwork since then. And also big question is, have you ever heard anything from Mrs. Nguyen?
Come out of the woodworks in which context?
I guess like people that like you used to know that now are like, I guess it could be in a few different contexts. It could be people that like you knew that were like affiliates through like gang activity that like now have like come out, like have tried to get back in touch with you. I know, like, I think in the book you talk about like your mom had said that you had like moved away. So like, how has it been with like people coming, you know, people obviously reading this book and then being like, oh, like this is where you were. Just, yeah.
Yeah, I had people that were in high school with me reach out after they read the book. Like through social media like Facebook or Instagram, find me and I just read your book. I didn't know. I always wondered what happened to you in high school. I've had a couple of my old gang associates have also read it. I guess they read it. They're like contact me like, I respect what you have done. Like I've had that. I have on one of the posts I did in when my book was being launched, I posted about it in an Asian entrepreneur group that I'm part of that has like 50,000 members. And like I remember how I wrote the post like on, you know, January 15th, 1999, I shot and killed Mr. Minuin and kind of went to the thing. This is how I transformed my life. This is my book that's come out. So kind of get the Asian community to kind of see it. Then there was another post by a woman that said, I remember that day very well. That's the day when one of my best friends was killed. So she ends up, I guess she was a friend of his. He came down here for her birthday or something. That's how he was at the club in Hollywood that night. She wasn't there because I can't remember. So her and I messaged a couple times on Facebook about it. Like she's like, I don't know how to feel about this post because I'm so happy that you turned your life around, but you're the person that killed my friend. And I didn't know what to say. So I remember I called Ralphie from my book because he's also home, and I was crying and I was like, Ralph, like, this is what happened. Look at this post. What do I do? And he's like, Quan, like, why be happy about this? Like, this is what we wanted to do in there. We wanted to give back. We wanted to make amends to our victims. Like, embrace this, lean into it. So it was a good reminder, you know, and I was very lucky to have supportive people in my circle. So I did reach out, but it was so, I was so afraid of saying the wrong things and being very mindful on how I said things, but it was just very, so I was like, hey, if you are open to any type of dialogue, if you're open to asking questions, like I'm here. So we began messaging a little bit back and forth. And then she just told me some stories about Min. Like she said, like he I think he punctured his lung when he was a little kid, so he only had one lung. And I remember during trial, and that's why he passed away so quickly in the car, is that because I guess my shots punctured his only good lung. That's why he choked to death and died. So that was heartbreaking to hear. I didn't get it because she stopped. Like I messaged her, and went back like 4 or 5 times. And then the last message I sent, she didn't respond. And then I followed up like a couple weeks later, but she didn't respond. So I didn't want to just press it. So it's just more like, okay, I'll just leave it unless if there's more, somebody reaches back on that end. So I didn't get to ask about his mother or anything, or if she knows anything about the family. I've had some random people message, and like, I don't know if they really knew him, or somebody pretended to say that she was the daughter of him, and why did I kill her father? But I didn't know if it was like a troll on social media. So there was quite a bit of that. Like, I get some weird random messages sometimes. So that's, yeah, I guess. But I've been told, yeah, well, you kind of knew this was going to happen if you're placing your story front and center. So but I just have to remember myself, like, hey, this is, people out here may not like it or whatever, but the story is for the guys inside. Like, I want them to find some freedom. So that's what I was doing my team.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Well, it is a 7:15 here in Chicago. So I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Are there any burning desires? Anybody that was like, oh, I want to ask a question, but I don't want to come up? Now's your chance. Okay. All right. Well, one of the themes in your book, I think, is definitely a lot about truthfulness and honesty. At the end of our Prison Yoga Chicago classes, we end with saying, know the truth, speak the truth, be the truth. So if y'all are down for it, I'll invite everybody to, we can just do that. It might have been a while for some of us. If you want to bring your palms together at your heart center and soften your gaze, maybe close your eyes if that feels good for you. Take a deep breath in through your nose. I invite you to sigh it out through your mouth. Softening. And I'll invite you to bring your hands to touch the center of your forehead. And you can say it aloud or silently to yourself, know the truth. And then bring your hands to touch below your lips. And you can say it aloud or to yourself, speak the truth. And then I'll invite you to bring your hands back to your heart center once more, acknowledging your heart underneath of your hands. And you can say it aloud or to yourself, be the truth. And then you might bow your mind to your heart if that feels right for you. Thank you so much to everybody for being here this evening and for sharing. Thank you to Quan for taking the time out of your schedule to talk with us. This has been really cool. Really appreciate it, and definitely have some things to look into from here. So.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for reading my book. So, and thank you for what you do, for going in and believing in the men inside.
Thank you, Kwan. Thank you, Christina, for the fundraiser and getting the books in the hands of our students. I cannot
Yeah.
wait for them to write you and you hear their responses. But thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Kwan. I know you're super, it sure sounds like you're super busy. So I know I appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. Remember, Donnie always reminded me, you ain't got it unless you're giving it back. So this is my little way of trying to give back.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Right, well.
Thank you. Bye.